Wood smoking all my dragons, divine righteous, almighty greats over achieving, never slacking. I'm back. We got the unknown warrior story, the bands of HM Royal Marines. And what made me want to react to this was because it was recommended. I seen it was highly recommended. So I figured I'd tap into it. On the last video I did, uh, I had misspoke. I had accidentally said that 300,000 people passed away in 9/11. Really meant to say 3,000. But sometimes I make mistakes. Thanks to all you that did correct me though. Much love to you, and I appreciate you. But yeah, I figured this time out of respect, I wouldn't even wear my hat, just out of respect for those that went through a lot of things. Went through a lot of things. Like when you look at things that say the unknown warrior story, first off, you're a warrior. I gotta take my hat off. In respects, I got a grandfather. I know on my paternal side, my father's father. I've never met him, but I know he was in a Desert Storm, and he was military. And I didn't even on my even my father's mother's father, he was also military. So I definitely got it in my bloodline for sure. So I'm gonna pay respects. But with that being said, original link will be in the description. We're gonna hop right into this. Here we go.
By the end of the Great War, the human cost meant that nearly every family from around the British Empire had suffered losses. Many of the fallen remained unidentified, resting in war graves far from home. One man's determination to honor these brave men led to the story of the Unknown Warrior. In 1916, Reverend David Railton, while serving as an army chaplain on the Western Front, had seen a small wooden cross marking a grave with the words, "An unknown British soldier." He later wrote, "How that grave caused me to think. I thought and thought, what can I do to ease the pain of father, mother, brother, sister, sweetheart, wife and friend? Quietly and gradually there came out of the mist of thought this answer, clear and strong. Let this body, this symbol of him, be carried over the sea to his native land." After writing to the Dean of Westminster, Herbert Ryle, in 1920, he proposed that a British soldier known only to God be laid to rest in Westminster Abbey amongst the kings. This was to represent the many thousands that never returned. The proposal was met with enthusiasm, and so began the journey of bringing this unknown warrior back where he belonged, back home. On the evening of the 7th of November 1920, the remains of 4 unidentified soldiers, one from each of the 4 main battlefields, were placed in the chapel at Saint-Paul-sur-Ternoise, near Arras in France. Brigadier Wyatt and Lieutenant Colonel Gell of the Directorate of Graves Registration and Inquiries entered the chapel alone. The 4 coffins were draped in Union flags and indistinguishable from each other. with eyes closed, Brigadier Wyatt rested his hand on one of the coffins. The selection of the unknown warrior was made. The coffin stayed at the chapel overnight, and on the afternoon of the 8th of November, it was transferred to the medieval castle within the ancient citadel at Boulogne. A Légion d'honneur en masse kept a vigil overnight. The following morning, the coffin was placed in a casket of oak timbers of trees from the grounds of Hampton Court Palace and placed onto a French military wagon. At 10:30 a.m., all the church bells of Boulogne tolled, and the mile-long procession, led by 1,000 local schoolchildren, escorted by a division of French troops, made a solemn march to the harbour. At the quayside, Marshal Foch saluted the casket before it was carried up the gangway of the British destroyer HMS Verdun. Just before noon, HMS Verdun slipped anchor and, with an escort of 6 battleships from the Atlantic Fleet, crossed the English Channel to Dover.
The reason why I may not be pausing saying much is because, just out of respect for the video, guys, I'm really usually when videos like this that's very honorable, I like to usually wait till the end to really put my opinion down there. But I definitely love how they're putting in so much effort to just get this body, get this body back where it belongs. Definitely a beautiful video so far. But like I said, if y'all feel like if I'm not saying much, I'm just waiting till the end out of respect.
precious cargo arrived at Admiralty Pier, Dover, to a 19-gun salute fired from Dover Castle. It was placed in utility van number 132, and at 5:50 p.m. on the 10th of November, it began its 3-hour train journey to Victoria Station. Arriving at Platform 8 at 8:32 p.m. and now regarded as a national symbol, the representative of the thousands who made the ultimate sacrifice, the unknown warrior, was greeted by a guard of honor and a large, silently respectful crowd. A plaque marks the site.
I gotta say real quick, that is just amazing. That the people would come together to do something like this and be there waiting, even though his body's unidentified, they know that this represents everybody who may be unidentified, and just to see people gather in unity like that is amazing. I just want to put that out there. But once again, I'm a wait again till the end for my next response, till I put my conclusion on this.
And every year on the 10th of November, a small remembrance service organised by the Western Front Association takes place between platforms 8 and 9 to honour and pay respects to this most significant of arrivals. It remained there overnight under escort until interment at Westminster Abbey the following day. On the morning of the 11th of November, the coffin was placed on a gun carriage drawn by 6 black horses from the Royal Horse Artillery. Huge crowds had gathered as the carriage travelled between lines of troops, their heads bowed and rifles reversed, for the short journey from Victoria Station to Westminster Abbey. Thousands came to pay their respects, lining the route as the carriage drew past, heading towards the Cenotaph, a hugely symbolic national shrine commemorating the 1.1 million British and Empire dead of the First World War and celebrating its centennial year. Representing an empty tomb, it immediately caught the public imagination, becoming a powerful focus for the grief of a nation and to honour the fallen, the glorious dead. Over 1 million people visited in the first week, and as Big Ben chimed 11 o'clock, a 2-minute silence fell throughout the capital, throughout the land, across the empire and on the seas, before the cenotaph was unveiled after the haunting notes of the last post rang out. After the unveiling, the king placed his wreath of red roses and bay leaves on the coffin. His card read, "In proud memory of those warriors who died unknown in the Great War, unknown and yet well known, as dying, and behold, they live." The cortege, comprising the escorting pallbearers and followed by the king, the royal family and ministers of state, continued to Westminster Abbey. Arriving at the north door of the Abbey, it was flanked by a guard of honour of 100 recipients of the nation's highest military honour, the Victoria Cross. The congregation settled and the choir sang. 100 women selected from the 15,000 who had lost a husband and one or more sons, bereft with emotion, took their place, and as the dean began to conduct the service, cries of mourning echoed around the abbey. The procession made its way to the grave, carefully removing the wreath, sidearms and helmet and the Union flag, and lowered the coffin into the grave. After the Lord's Prayer, the hymn "Abide with Me" was sung with spirit and heartfelt emotion as the burial service came to a close. Servicemen from the armed forces stood guard as tens of thousands of mourners on a scale never seen before filed silently past the unknown warrior to pay their respects. The identity of the unknown warrior will rightly never be known. He represents the son of every mother, the husband of every wife, the brother of every sister killed in the Great War and every war. Those whose loved ones were amongst the unknown know that in this tomb there is resting the body of their beloved, and with it brings the hope and joy of many thousands, knowing that this body, this symbol of him, will always be remembered then, now, and forevermore, as the unknown warrior is finally home.
what I love is how they said that this represents the lost or unidentified soldiers, and not just the Great War, not just World War I, but in every war. And I thought that was very powerful because obviously, as humans, there's so much war constantly going on. Excuse me if I gotta keep wiping and blowing my nose because it's allergy season. I tried to hold out as much as possible because my allergies are like the worst when allergy season comes. It's been doing all right, but certain days are worse than others. But yeah, I really like how they said it. Just this represents so many people that didn't make it home. What they did to go back and retrieve, grab that unknown soldier's casket, and to what they did was just so honorable. And to see so many people, like I stated earlier, lined up and just having that, what they say, like a 2 minute moment of silence, bowing their heads, it just goes to show how much appreciation they truly have. And it's like that individual might be unknown in this world, but maybe in the next world, those individuals, period, maybe they're like celebrity status of known for their sacrifices. When it comes to governments, even leaving governments aside, even leaving nations aside, just looking at the individuals that in their mind they just want freedom. They just want to protect their people. That's what, at least back in the day, what most soldiers, that was their whole ideology. That was their whole viewpoint, was I want to protect my people. I want to fight for freedom. So for those that went into those battles with those mindsets, um, heroic, heroic. So going back to the last video I reacted to and looking at people comment and talk about how they've had great grandparents that were blown up and uncles and all these tragic things. I think someone even said they had like a great grandfather or something that didn't even, they just went and signed up for the war and then, was blown up. Or rest in power, first off, rest in power. But when you hear stories like that, I mean, speechless. It makes me want to have a moment of silence. Speechless. When you look at the world then and you look at the world today, it's like they didn't have no social media to document what they were going through. They didn't have any, they couldn't just video chat and be like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. A lot of these stories, there's so many stories that are unheard. And then a lot of people that did make it back, there's a lot of people with PTSD that don't want to talk about those stories. That don't, it's just they're messed up in the head. There's a lot of people that are just messed up from seeing things that are unimaginable. And I truly believe when you go through a certain amount of trauma, it breaks off pieces of your soul into the ethers. And that's why people can't speak. They can't really, because literally it breaks off a piece of your soul. It's like those traumatic experiences, it messes you up. Which is why even in ancient cultures they had certain what we know as shamans that would know how to retrieve pieces of the soul. When you look at ancient African cultures, they had, well, like I said, what we know as shamans, that after a soldier would go to war, they would spend 2-3 months with soldiers doing spiritual work because they understood that pieces of your soul, like that, it fragments of it breaks when you go through these, when you have to kill and watch people be killed, and things blowing up, and just things that are, like I said, unimaginable. So for people that, like I said, that signed up for this, just in their mind, just wanting freedom, just feeling like they wanting to do the right thing, I mean, that's honorable. That is very honorable. I know I was told that my grandfather, who was in Desert Storm, he had fell in like a foxhole or something like that, and I know he he had to get like some steel in his leg or something like that. So it's just anything can happen. Anything can happen. Anything, and that's what's so scary about it. You know, many mothers, many daughters, many wives, they lost their, listen, this was a beautiful story. Um, the unknown warrior, the unknown warrior. Shout out to y'all for the recommendation, and I'm gonna keep this rocking and rolling. At the end of the day, this is a beautiful thing, and as someone like me, all the way in the northeastern part of the United States, can look at so much different, cultures and traditions around the world, and really, tap in and do my homework and see what really happened in history. Because I could be doing anything else. I could be doing anything else, entertaining anything else. But I think this is important. I think that I don't think I know this is important. And like I said, they didn't have social media to document what they were going through. To they couldn't just send a video or a picture, to tell their story. So me going back and really learning history and really paying attention to it, I feel like in a way that's honoring those that did pass away. It's keeping them alive. It's keeping the energy flowing. So with that being said, original link in the description. I will be back with more soon. And to all who have a relative that lost their life, listen, rest in power to them, and keep your head up, and just know that somewhere, as long as you keep honoring them, as long as you keep their memory alive, that energy is going to them somewhere, and I appreciate that. Much love to you all.